Welcome, everybody. We are so glad you could join us for today's session on elevating your nonprofit, scaling for 2025 with Business Central. I'm Katie Erickson. I'm the marketing director here at Boyer, and I have just two quick things for you. First of all, I did want to let you know that you are muted, but if you have any questions throughout the session, go ahead and put those in that chat option there, and we'll do our best to answer them either throughout or at the end of the session if we have time. If we do run out of time, no worries, we can still follow up with you afterwards and make sure we get any of those questions answered. Second, yes, we are recording, and yes, you will get that recording. Teams is pretty quick about that. You may still get it today. If not, probably early tomorrow. So you can go ahead and move to the second slide there.
Okay. Bear with me. There we go. Okay. You want me to take over, Katie? Or go ahead.
Oh, let me introduce you real quick because I have
Okay.
some nice things to say about you.
Oh, thank you.
Well, this is Sue Locksmead is going to be our presenter today, and she's actually got about 3 decades of experience, you guys, working with Microsoft ERP. So she's done so many implementations, and she is very knowledgeable on how to help you make the best of Microsoft ecosystem, specifically ERP. She's been with Boyer for the past 4.5 years or so, and is currently one of our pre-sales experts, specifically focused on the nonprofit industry. So she specializes in helping nonprofits figure out the best way to use Microsoft Dynamics 365 Business Central to fit their unique needs. And then we also have Kara Franklin on hand with us today. She's our nonprofit sales expert, and she is also going to be here to help with any of those questions. With that, I'm going to go ahead and give it to Sue.
Thank you, Katie. Just a little overview of what we're going to cover today. We will talk a little bit about Boyer and what we do. We'll then go through the Microsoft Cloud solution ecosystem. So where does Business Central fit in the Microsoft Cloud, and what is the ecosystem all about? We'll highlight a few of the nonprofit features of Business Central. We'll go through some of the newer features that were added in the past year or so, and how it relates to nonprofits. And then we'll get into our demonstration. So we'll keep the overview pretty quick, and then we'll get right into the demonstration. First of all, so who's Boyer? Boyer's been around for over 30 years implementing Microsoft Dynamics solutions. We started off as an SL, one of the Microsoft legacy products, and implementing SL. And today we implement not just the Microsoft Dynamics ERP, but we implement the Power Platform and the CRM and other Microsoft applications. We have about 550 clients nationwide. So we are throughout the country. Our consulting staff and our team is spread throughout the U.S., but our home base is Minneapolis. We're in the top 5% of Microsoft partners migrating clients to the cloud. So we've had tons of experience in taking those QuickBooks and GP and SL and older systems and migrating them into the Business Central in the cloud. And then 1 out of every 5 of our clients is nonprofit. And then on top of that, we are pretty proud of a 2023 award, a Microsoft Partner of the Year award that we had won. And so that's just a little bit about Boyer. Let's talk a little bit about the ecosystem, and you'll hear this taught to this terminology ecosystem, the Microsoft ecosystem, but I want to kind of point out a few things. So not recently, but over the last year or two, you hear a lot about Copilot or AI. So Microsoft's AI is called Copilot, and you can see how that embraces or surrounds all the applications. So when we talk about Business Central, which is up here at the top, it's Microsoft's ERP, one of their ERP solutions. It integrates with Copilot, just like Copilot talks and works with Excel and Word. It's also going to work with Business Central, and we'll go through and show some examples of that. Also, as part of this ecosystem, you've got tools like Power Platform, Power BI, Power Automate. So what does that mean? That means that now we get reporting. We can pull reporting using Power BI's reporting tool because it's all part of the same ecosystem. And then the bottom line here is that it all sits on the Microsoft Azure cloud platform. And so that really just means from administration, it all is managed and administered from an IT perspective at one level. So what that means for like a Business Central is when you get a new license, You get a new user that needs to get into Microsoft. They're just set up under the D360 for Microsoft's 365 cloud as a user, and they're assigned a BC license, just like they're assigned an Excel license. So maintenance is pretty common throughout all these applications. And if I go ahead and move, let me go ahead and we're going to go to the next slide. Bear with me. I don't know why there we go. So some of the key features that we are going to go through that I want to point out, dimensional reporting and just what we call dimensions, that's going to be your ability to tailor Business Central to track things like projects and grants and funds and departments. The dimensions are what are user defined, but from a non-for-profit world, funds are going to be quite common dimension. A grant will be a common dimension. And so we'll talk about how that's configured and then how that applies to the reporting. We will go through and talk a little bit about financial report design. So what's nice about Business Central is that it's got a really nice base financial report writer that your average accountant can use. I don't have to be an IT expert. I don't have to be a guru, and I can design my own financial reports, pulling projects and funds and grants in my dimensional reporting. So we're going to cover that. Recently, I think the statistical and allocation accounts, those were added, I think, towards the end of 2023, but definitely within the last year or so. And so the ability to track statistics and allocations. And so example was going to be, I can track the number of people in various departments and then be able to process an expense allocation based on those number of people. So I can allocate rent amongst the different departments based on headcount. So this is pretty, nonprofits, I'm sure if you're doing any type of allocations, you're doing them in spreadsheets. A lot of people have, but now we're moving to automate that a little better. The analysis and pivot tables, that was added probably in the last year, and I would just love the tool. It's basically being able to do analysis of your data right within Business Central. It used to be that you would export it out, put in Excel, do pivot tables, and do all this analysis. Now you've got this ability to analyze data, so we'll cover that. And then we'll cover areas where Copilot is helping you become more efficient. Microsoft's investment in Copilot is significant, and it will continue to be significant. So I see the overall goal is to help you become more efficient in your use of the system. So we will cover all those features. Okay, I am going to go ahead and stop sharing the overview, and we're going to go right into Business Central. So let me go ahead and okay. So this is the Business Central homepage. I am in a company called Nonprofit Financials, so we'll do our demonstration out of this particular company. If I go across the top, you'll notice I do get the little waffle of all my different Microsoft apps that I can launch. I happen to have Outlook launch, just so you can see, and I can point out some things that showing that integration with Business Central and Outlook. So I just want to kind of make you aware of it. But you can launch any of your other Microsoft applications, and it would be just up here as another item on your browser. So and just go ahead and we'll go ahead and close this out. I do want to kind of point out, I launched this from my favorite. I have a favorite set up for Business Central, and I just launch it from a browser. It can be launched from any browser, laptop, a tablet. You can even download Business Central as an app on your phone, which is going to be helpful when we start talking about approval workflows and how those work and how a user could approve from their phone. So just kind of pointing that out. Across the top here, this is my environment. Okay, so everybody, when they buy Business Central, they get one production environment. That's your live environment, and then you get various sandboxes, we call them. So what are they used for? You get 3 sandboxes. And so in your production environment, you have as many companies as you need. You can easily switch companies or open up multiple companies if need be. So maybe I need to take and have my consolidation. I could just switch over to my consolidation, or I could just open a new tab, which becomes pretty efficient. Then I could just kind of toggle back and forth between, my multiple companies. So if you're using multiple companies. I want to point out on the sandboxes. So I do have some sandboxes. And so what you want to be aware of for sandboxes is Microsoft rolls out 2 major releases a year with Business Central. So what would I use my sandbox for? Well, maybe I want to roll out those features in my sandbox, test them, make sure all's good before I roll them out to my production. But those two new versions every year are usually a release of major features. And like I said earlier, some of the things I'm showing you are things that were released in 2024. So you'll definitely want to take advantage of them. So sandboxes are used for testing, building integrations. If you want to build integrations between Business Central and other applications, you test it, you configure it, you make sure all's working, and then you roll it out to production. And that's all part of your licensing. Just to be aware, so Microsoft licensing is a per user license fee, which means that you pay per user. If you are a nonprofit, you will get significant discount on the licensing. Microsoft offers very, very reasonably inexpensive price licensing for Business Central. And so it's a per user license, which doesn't matter what, you have access to all the modules available. You have access to all the core modules, the finance, the sales, the purchasing. The only one that bumps the pricing a little higher is if you are using manufacturing, which I would imagine most nonprofits don't have manufacturing. So and the reason I point that out is if you look at other solutions and other products, some of them price differently, and you'll just find that they'll price based on company, they'll price based on modules you're using, whereas Business Central is going to be unique in that it's based on a user license only. Across the top here, here's my little Copilot. Okay, I actually started asking Copilot, but if I open it up, I do have some prompts here if I want to find something, I wanted to explain something to me, or if I want to ask it something. So you can ask Copilot specific information about your data. So I just want to show you this right here. I asked Copilot, what is the balance of the GL count donations? So I wanted to know how much money did I get this year in donations? And it came back with, looks like a negative 295,912. It's a negative because it's a credit balance, because it's a revenue count. And then I could drill into it. So Copilot came back and said, okay, this is your donation revenue. Let's drill into that. I can go ahead and see, oh yeah, look at that. It's 295. And I could drill in even further. I could go into looking at all the detailed transactions that make up that donation revenue. And you could see, so we go see over here, we can glance over and we got all these detailed transactions. And then we could just go back. And so we're going to go back. I also asked Copilot, I just asked it, how do I record cash receipts? And it came back with some instructions. How do I record cash receipts? And it also put a reference in that it actually pulls me into the training manual of how to actually complete a cash receipt. So those are just a couple of examples overall, based on the overall system of using Copilot. And you'll see some more specific examples when we get into the application a little more. Again, I point out a couple things here. Personalize is your ability to personalize a screen. So I'm in personalization mode. And so what I can do is hide certain things. For example, I'll go ahead and we'll go into, let's say, general journals, which are journal entries, and I'll open that up. And I'm able to, and I'll go ahead and open up a journal. We'll go take a look at the journal here. So I'm able to, maybe I want fund to get moved over. I don't want the fund next to the account number. And this is my journal entry screen. So this is just my way of, maybe I'm really doing anything with grants and projects and I want to go ahead and hide a field. Or maybe I need to add a field. And so I can go ahead over here and I've got, I want the account name on this particular window. And so I go ahead here and drag that over and move the account name over. I'm not going to keep going here. It doesn't seem to want to move my account name over, but you get the idea that you can go ahead and add the fields that you need. So what does that do? That's throughout the whole system. So it just makes, screens where I enter data easier for me. So I'm not having to jump past certain fields that aren't really in order by key data, or it just helps me view data. So I can view data, just the data I want to view. So that's your personalize. And then the next thing I'll talk about is just my settings. So my settings, everybody's assigned a role, and I happen to be a business manager. So as a role of a business manager, it triggers what, not triggers, but it defaults what I see on my home screen. So as a business manager, I get to see finance and I get to see cash and I get to see sales and purchasing, etc. If I was an accounts payable clerk, I would not see all of this. I would definitely see a lot less data. Maybe I'm not into finance. These roles can be tweaked. You can take a role and modify it for how your users would use the system. On top of roles, we also have what's called permission sets. So every user, just because I'm a business manager, I'm going to go ahead and pull up myself as a user. Just because I'm a business manager doesn't mean that I could be secured out of certain things. So I'll just kind of show you that this is my user, but down here is what I actually have rights to do. So business sets, we call permission sets. There are default permission sets. This one here is basically a permission set for all the access to do pretty much anything in the system. They could be, you could be secured down to table and field level, but you also can make copies of the existing permission sets and tweak them for your organization. So, maybe your accounts payable clerk enters invoices, but they're not responsible for payment of the bills. And so we restrict them out of that. And that's done all through permission sets. So very secure, very robust security to make sure that, your users only have access to what they need to have access to. If we go through, I just want to kind of point out a couple of other things. I'm just going to do a little navigation here and talk a little bit about just kind of an analysis mode. And so I'm going to go ahead and we're going to go take a look at general ledger entries. So general ledger entries, this is a list of all my GL transactions. And this data here, this list of all this data, this is basically what the system uses to produce financial reports. You can see this first entry here looks like it's an invoice. It's a document number. I can see it's coded to the other expense account. It's coded to a fund, etc. So when you're looking at a list of data, you can filter this list of data by any of these headings. So I found a filter on functional expense. I could say filter. And let's say I just want to narrow it down to all the fundraising functional expense accounts. And now I've got just a list of all the functional expense transactions for fundraising. And so at any point, I've got a little share button that you can open in Excel. So I'm going to go ahead. This is nice, clean, open in Excel, columnar with headings. And that little share button is throughout the whole system. I'm just giving you an example. So these are all my functional fundraising expenses, and I could do whatever analysis I want to do with that if I want to do it that way. I'll go ahead and close that out, come back over here. So I filtered on functional expenses. I can filter, I did a filter already. So I could save filters. So I could save this and call this fundraising. So I have this filter out here all the time, and then I could just come in here at any point in time and just pick the fundraising functional expenses. I do have one built. I have one built for 2024 expenses. I've got a few built, but I did 2024 expenses. And you can see the filter down here. It's telling me it's all the account numbers that start with 5 or later. That 5 ... is Business Central's terminology for everything after something that starts with a 5. And then I told it just for January 24 through December 2024. So I've got a nice list, and I saved that. And anytime I want to come in here, I could just come in here and just click on that. And then I've got that nice list of that particular data. I also have a little button here to put me into an analysis mode. So think of I'm in my 2024 expenses, and I've moved over to an analysis mode, which is it's really pivot tables. And so I don't have to send it out to Excel and do a pivot table. And the example I'll use here is I took this analysis. So this is just a generic analysis right now. It's just a bunch of transactions. I could maybe want to group my 2024 expenses by GL account. So I could just see the totals for each GL account for 2024. So I'll just come over here and drag my GL account into my row groups. And now I've got a total for all my GL accounts. So, and maybe here's another thing I want to do. The amounts are over here on the right, and I want to drag and move those over so I can see them a little easier. And so I've dragged that over. Let me move it over a little bit more. So I now have, these are all my, I have a total for account 6010 for 1250, and I can expand that and see the detail of it, what makes up that 1250. 1250 is actually advertising. I could probably move that description over so you can kind of see that right away, but I can expand or collapse any of these sections. So I can see for, let's move over that description so you kind of can see a little better. So we got that moved over. So I can see, okay, for consulting, I've got 3210 consulting, and I can collapse that. I can collapse that. I can save this analysis. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to rename it, and I'm going to put expenses by GL account. So now I have that out here, and I don't have to come in here. All I got to do is come in here and click on it, and I can do my analysis. I built one over here called functional expense analysis. So I've got it grouped by functional expense, and I can see all my expenses for fundraising, for administration, and for programs, and I can collapse and expand and collapse that also. I can also put this in Excel. And so if I go ahead and export it out to Excel, what it does is it puts the levels in. So you can see the summary level and the detail level through the Excel document. So I'm going to enable editing here, and you can see this is my detail level that I'm at. And then I could go ahead and I clicked on this more summary level, and I could see my totals by functional expense code. So this was recent. This was probably one of the newer features in 2024 or maybe late 2023, but people are still starting to get used to being able to use it. But it is a quick ad hoc reviewing tool. It could be, this doesn't have to be just on your GL. This could be I'm analyzing my vendor transactions, and I want to look at all my purchases by vendor. Lots of ways to use this particular tool. I can go ahead and close out, leave the analysis mode. If you notice, let me go back to the, oh yeah, I'm going to leave the analysis mode, but I want to point out, here's our Copilot button here. So what this does, and I'm not going to build out, but Copilot will help you build your own analysis. So I could start telling it, all right, what fields do I want? I want the post date field. I want the GL account field. I will do it. And I want the amount. That's all I want. And I can start, and it will generate the analysis for me instead of starting out with just a full blown analysis that I start off with, which was my analysis one. And so it starts building that out for me that I can then work with. I'm going to go ahead and go back over here and just get back into my regular look there's my regular look for my GL entries where I had my views and my save views. So that's just a couple of newer features that are available in Business Central that really help with your own review of the data. And so you saw how I went ahead and I exported that out. And the other thing, let me go ahead and I'm going to actually go ahead and we'll go to the chart of accounts because that's my next topic. But I want to point out this little button here that I opened in Excel. I actually can edit in Excel also. And you'll see when I do an edit Excel, what's the difference between open and edit? Edit is my ability to update data and to pull data. So edit Excel actually opens up a data connector. Let me get just opening now, enable editing. It opens up a data connector connecting Excel with BC. And I can save this file, call it my chart of accounts file. I don't have to be in BC, and I can just click on the refresh, and it basically is refreshing and pushing my data out. I can use it to push data back into BC. Maybe I have to make some corrections, maybe corrections on some categories. I'm not going to make some change. Well, I'll go ahead and make a correction here. Let's just say that this particular account category, I'm not going to make change, but I could make a change and then I could publish it back and it'll update BC. Obviously, first of all, you have to have proper security to do that. Not everybody's doing these things, but it is a way to be able to pull data or push data back and out with a data connector direct. So you can see how there's a tighter integration there with Excel, because it's part of the whole Microsoft ecosystem. You have stronger capabilities with those types of integrations. I'll go ahead and close that, and let's go back over here. We'll leave it open. Okay. All right. So let's talk a little bit about just charts of accounts and how it relates to nonprofits. So with Business Central and with most ERP systems, you develop your chart of accounts. So if you notice here a couple things, so these accounts here are called posting accounts. They have balances. What's nice about the chart of accounts is I got quick drill back to see how much is in checking. Oh, there's 280,000, and then you can see all the transactions to make it up. So what's unique about it, this chart of accounts is, to me, I always think of it as like a mini trial balance, also a way to view transactional data based on account balances. I have a nice little search up here. Let's just search for an account. Let's search for donations. So I don't have to scroll up and down. It'll try to find anything that has the name or the word donation in it, and it found donation revenue. So this is called, this is the list mode, and then I've got my drill back that I can drill into it. If I want to open up the account, I open it up, and now I'm in what I call a card mode. So this same process or concept goes across most master records. So I've list of vendors, I've got a list, I can search for them, and then I open it up and I'm in a card mode where there's much more detail around it. Couple nice things to point out with Business Central is, so this donation account was a posting account. I was able to set up headers, beginning totals, and end totals. And so that's just a nice way for me to be able to drill into totals. So I could have total assets and drill into that and see what makes up that. So like I said, kind of a mini trial balance. It also facilitates my financial reporting. I can build reports based on my chart of accounts. And so if I put my totals into my headers, and I could pull that right into a financial report and build that out. So if you go ahead, and so the other thing I want to point out is, so each account, when you set it up with a category, whether it's assets, liabilities, equity, income. So these categories are not user defined. They are just Business Central categories, but the subcategories are all user defined. And so what I wanted to point out is I get to tell this system what the subcategories are, and then whatever we call them, and what this is telling me, okay, you change your subcategory. But what it does is it builds an out-of-the-box set of financials for me, as long as I'm going to put this back to donation revenue. And what this little message up here is telling me is, you made a change, and it keeps those, do I want to update my financials? And I'll say, yeah, I want to update those financials. So it keeps them all up to date if I had a new account, or maybe I change something to another subcategory. But I'll just kind of point out, I'm just going to go into the GL categories screen where all the subcategories are defined and kind of show you. You decide how you want these to be configured. And so if you don't have inventory, that wouldn't be part of your subcategories, but these are all mapped to specific accounts. And then this will create a set of financial statements for you, at least to get a nice out of the box set of financials. All right. So we've got chart of, so I don't want to ignore along. So we've got our chart of accounts. I'm going to go back to my all view, and you can see here. I also want to point out, so I did the open in Excel. Your share to Teams is going to basically share this link to Teams, and so the person can actually drill into the data from the link. As long as they have the access to Business Central, they have rights to Business Central, they could just click on the share to Teams, or I could just copy this link, put it in an email, and then they can click on the link and open it, and it would open up right here, right to the chart of accounts. So you can use that as a way to share out data. Maybe it's you're sharing out a report. Maybe you're sharing out a specific record, but the little arrow button, a little share button is available throughout the system to be able to share out data. So the other thing that I'll point out now is that you notice the chart of accounts. I'll just kind of scroll down. We'll go ahead and take a look at, we'll go ahead and actually I'm going to filter on the categories. Actually, I'm going to actually filter on this income balance field, and I'm going to filter on just looking at the income statement portion of it. So we're going to go ahead and filter on income statement. So I wanted to point out, you'll notice that when you're looking at the chart of accounts, you're just looking at I'll call it the natural account or just the main account. So if I'm looking at advertising here, it's just 6010. But associated with advertising, these are the transactions. We also have a fund code and a grant and other various dimensional data is what it's called. So when you set up your chart of accounts, you're setting up the main account number, and then you're setting up what's called dimensions. So let me go ahead and go into dimensions. And I'm using just a global search. I could have launched dimensions from my finance menu, but I'm just using a global search to just find dimensions. So the dimensions are user defined. And so in the nonprofit world, you're going to define most likely fund as a dimension. In this particular demo company, we defined 3 different dimensions. We're going to track grants, we're going to track the fund, and we're going to track functional expenses. And so within each grouping, we have what's called dimensional values. And so under functional expenses, I've got 3 different values: administration, fundraising, programs. So when I process a transaction, I will process it against administration, fundraising, programs. Dimensions have rules, and so this is how you keep a data integrity in place. I can tell the system that nobody ever can skip functional expense because we need it recorded in every single transaction. If something really is truly not a functional expense, sometimes it just goes to an administration functional expense. So you define the rules so people can't skip it. They have to put a value in. You could default dimensions. So for example, maybe I've got customers set up and we're going to issue invoices to customers, and they are part of a specific grant. If I default the grant on the customer record, it just flows through on all the transactions, and then that's tracked all the way down to the financial level. So I've got my grants and I have my grant dimension values. I actually used grant and project as the same, and I've got example here. What's nice about dimensions, if you look at this example, I can group dimensions together. So I actually grouped them together. So if I wanted to do a report on all grants, I could do G9999. I could actually, Business Central allows wildcards, so I could actually just do G asterisk and it will give me a report on all grants. If I wanted to do just projects or project, if I wanted to do project A, I could do P110. But if you could build hierarchy within your particular dimensions and dimension values. So that's just an example how you've got grants as a grouping and projects as another grouping. And then my funds, I've got my dimension values in this particular company. I've got a bunch of restricted funds and I've got my R1 unrestricted fund. And so again, you process transactions, you can put a fund on the transactions, you can make that required on every transaction. So there's, debt integrity stays in place. So at the end of the day, when things flow, they flow you code it to a GL account and a fund, and whether maybe these transactions didn't have a grant, so you didn't need to worry about that. And here's your functional expense. So you can see how when I processed the transaction, I had put the functional expense code on it and I had put the fund code on it. All right, so now we've got our chart of accounts, we've got our dimensional reporting, our dimensions all set up. We've got a few other types of things on the finance area. I mentioned this earlier, but I do want to point out, so you've got your statistical counts. So this is the newer feature. I set up a statistical count for employee count per function. These statistical counts can be just used to print on financials. Statistical counts are entered through a statistical count journal. You can build out your values. Basically, I build out my values and put it in the journal to record it. So this is a pretty simple one. At the beginning of January 2024, I've got 12 people in fundraising. I got 61 people in programs, and I've got 20 people in administration. So this could be a statistic on a financial report that you just put, and you can do some formulas based on that. Or The other part about the statistical counts work in conjunction with the allocations. So we'll go ahead and I'll go ahead and open up the allocation account. And I've got two allocations set up. So you can have fixed allocations or variable. Fixed are really straightforward. This is basically breaking down the allocations by percent. And you can see each one of these. This is basically saying charge admin 40%. This one's charging fundraising. They're getting 50%. And so I can apply this account, this fixed allocation to an AP invoice, to a journal entry, and it'll automatically break down the percentages by each of the functional expenses. Now, let's look at the variable. And this is nice. So the concept behind variable basically is saying, okay, I want to allocate rent. This is rent. This is where the destination is going to. And I want to use the basis as the statistical employee count per function. And then so breakdown, and then this is the breakdown for admin, fundraising, and programs. So this particular allocation, if I run the test allocation, you'll get the idea how that's doing. It's looking at each of the employee counts. So the first admin grouping is 20 people, which is 21.51 percentages, so which is $215 of 1,000. So this is just a test allocation to show you how it would be broken down. There's only 12 people in our fundraising group, and so they're going to get 129.03, and then the balance is 61 people, which is the bigger group, and that's the program group, and they're getting 655.92 of the 1,000 because it's broken down by the percent of employees in each of those functional expense areas. So that's how, and this allocation, I showed you the test just so you can view it and make sure it's right, but this allocation can then be used in a journal entry, or it can be used back over. And let's just go ahead and take a look at the journal entry. So in the finance area, I've got a general journal all set up for allocation. And you can see I'm using the allocation account 9915, which happens to be my rent variable allocation for $2,000, and it's offsetting an accrual account for negative $2,000. If I preview post this, so whenever you're putting an entry in Business Central, you can preview post before you post to just check it out and make sure it's okay. And we'll go ahead and open this up. And you can see how, here's my mouse over here a little bit on the right. This is sometimes where I would personalize, and you can see it's broken down administration of the 2,000, how it's broken down. It's using that variable allocation to calculate that. Okay. I'm going to also point out while we're in here, you can see a little status of here is approved. So I'm going to talk a little bit about workflow. So a lot of nonprofits love the workflow. Business Central's their standard out of the box workflow that could be turned on. I turned on a really simple workflow for journal entries. And so that particular one, I can see that was approved. So basically the workflow could be is that I'm recording a journal entry. So I've got these monthly journal entry. It's got a restrictions, imposed restriction, which means that I think I probably already set it off for approval. But basically, before I could process it, and I'm not approving of it, I requested approval, send approval. So I'm going to go back to my home screen and kind of talk through. I've got these what we call queues on my home screen, and you can see I've got two queues. This one is ones that I sent for approval requests, and these are the ones that I'm supposed to approve. So right now I've got two approval requests that I sent. So I turned on workflow for journal entry. Oh, actually I've got workflow turned on in two places. The first one is I turned on workflow on AP and basically said, okay, I did an entered AP invoice for Boyer, and this is the invoice number, and I sent it, and it's waiting for Christine Talley to approve. That's my approval workflow for purchase invoice. And then I also, that journal entry, I sent that one off for approval, and it's also waiting for Christine to approve. So these are two that I sent out. Workflow approvals, people can get email. Let me see. So I can show you over in Outlook when I submitted for approval it went ahead, and this is Christine's email that came through my sent email box. So you can see she's got all these ones. I've sent her a bunch of stuff that she hasn't approved. So it will accumulate it until she's approved it. But she can basically come in here. This all came through Outlook. So all the workflow approvals go right. I can come in here and just click on, she could come in here, click on it. It should open up the record and basically then let her look at that record and let her, evaluate it. And there's the journal entry basically, and she could go ahead and approve it. She would have an approve button. She would also have a reject button. Because I'm not the approver on this, it's not letting me do that. But I'm going to show you what it would look like. So I'm going to go back over here, and this journal batch, since Christine isn't here to approve, I'm going to go ahead and approve for her. I happen to be an admin approver, and I happen to be a delegate. If I can delegate it to me, because I'm admin, not everybody can be doing this, but I'm delegating it to me so I can finish this whole approval process. So this is the approver. I can open up the record. I can go ahead and I can put in some comments and reject it. So maybe something's wrong with this, or I'm going to keep it simple and I can just go ahead and approve it. Once it's approved, it gets the status approved, and then you can go ahead and post it. So all of these approval, if I canceled it, if it then resubmitted to me, all of these approval records are all being maintained in the system. So you can hand to your auditor if they need to see, list of all the transactions for approval that have been approved and who approved. It's all online. You can see the history of those approvals. I still have one more request that I'm waiting on approval for, which is fine. I'm just going to leave them out there. But that's just kind of a quick overview, and specifically nonprofits, AP invoices, definitely commonplace. And then the journal entries, really, really big one that turn on to approvals can get fancy. My approval setup, I just told it that for journal entries, they all go to Christine for approval. They could go to a group of people where only one has to approve. You can go based on dollars to certain people based on, it goes to the department manager. And if it's over certain dollars, then it goes to this controller, etc. So you can build those approval rules too. But definitely in the nonprofit world, this has been, implemented in most environments when they implement Business Central. All right. So let's go ahead. And actually, I'm going to point out, we're going to talk a little bit about financial reporting. Before I talk about the financial reporting, I'm just going to point out budgeting. So Business Central maintains budgets, and budgets can be maintained at the dimension level. So we've set up a budget, and we're actually tracking fund and functional expense on the dimension, on the budget. So I'm going to open up this budget. The way that this budget, I've got to go ahead and it's for 2024. I don't have data for 25 in yet. So let's do 2024. So you can see. So the way that the budget, you can see I've got for donation revenue, I've got budget 115,000 and 10,000 per month. It looks like going across, and maybe 1 month's a little short. I could drill into it and kind of see the budget entries. So the way the budget was put into the system is I can export out a budget, which is basically a budget template. I can export out, I'm exporting out for 2024, 12 periods, length monthly, because I'm budgeting monthly, and I'm exporting out these column dimensions, which is, the dimensions I want to budget on. Let me see if I got it. And I usually tell it I just budget on revenue and expenses. So I'm going to start with just account 4 and on, and then it will creating a template for me. Whoopsie days. Let me go back up there. I'm going to go ahead and have to open up the template for my down. So whenever you export, it always lands in your download folder. So I'll go ahead and we'll open up my download folder and we'll open it up. So I probably clicked too many clicks before so I've got my template. Okay. There's my template. And I'll enable editing. So you can see I can export out a blank template. I happen to export out the 2024 data, and you can see all so I just have to make changes to this. I could clear it out. I could put new date ranges in to do 2025, and then I use this template to import the budget back in. So basically it's a tool to store your budgets. You could probably do some analysis in Excel. There are more sophisticated budgeting add-ons, budgeting financial analysis tools that work with Business Central. So this is just your base budgets basically for putting into Business Central and getting and reporting off of it. So we'll go ahead over here. And we're just going to go ahead and I would just want to show you that because it falls in line with the finance report writer. So we'll go to financial report writer. So these are various reports that we set up. These M incomes, I told you that the system will build out a row. So it's made up of a row and a column definition. So the rows are the amounts going across each row and the columns is what's going in each column. So the system built these M1s and this was based on those subcategories. So I'll show you this row definition. So we'll go and take a look at it. And I'm not going to make a copy of it. It's telling me, hey, this is the automated one. Don't be making changes. And so this was all based on those subcategories and it built it out. And you can see it's mapped to all the different accounts based on how you set up the subcategories. And so I've got my basic, row format for my income statement. And then I've got some column definitions. So this particular column definition, I'll just go ahead and have you see that. Let's do an edit of this definition. And this one is, let's take a look here, a 12-month analysis. So this is looking at each period. It's based on the net amount for each period. It's looking at actuals, not budget. And there's a formula here, period 1, period 2. These are the formulas for the period. So basically like a 12-month analysis. So I've got this report all ready to go. People can easily build off of these out. Let me just kind of show a couple other ones. This is the same row, but this column definition, let's just look at the different flavors of these. This is a budget versus actual column definition. So let's go look at that column layout. And you can see, okay, we're taking actuals, which are entries, budget, which are budget entries, and we're taking a variance, which is the formula that's over here, 1 minus 2, which is column 1 minus column 2. So column layouts and row definitions are all, you can create any combination of accounts and dimensions. So let's look at this one. This is a quick statement of activities by fund. And if I'm using the same row layout, but all I'm doing in this one is basically going ahead and hitting, I've got a fund column layout showing the restricted funds, which is all the R's. That's how we developed our restricted, and our unrestricted, which is all the U's. So it's formula for that. So that's how we get restricted versus unrestricted. This one here, if we look at this one, this is functional expenses. I'm going to go ahead and run the statement. Let's go ahead and view the financial. So I can view, I can print. Let's just view it because viewing has some really nice features. So I've got this view. I can actually view it and actually filter on maybe I want to look at all these administration, fundraising, program services, but I want to look at maybe just one particular fund, maybe a certain restricted fund. I'm not going to filter on that, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and hide these filters so I have more room to work with. And when you're viewing it, you've got drill back. So what's making up this administration donation revenue? I drill back, I could drill back further, and I get a list of all the transactions and I can analyze that and take a look at that. Actually, if you want, you can even go into your analysis mode, which I was looking at earlier. I'm not going to go into analysis mode, but you can go to analysis mode and do some pivot tables off of that. But nice little drill back, viewing the data, seeing what I need for nice ad hoc reporting that people come into and just, take a look at the financial information. So very easy to build out. You can see I can create copies of these row definitions and tweak them, but pretty easy to build out. Let's take a look at this one. I like the budget versus actual. So this is using the budget. I'll do it and I could filter on a specific functional expense if I wanted to. I could say, okay, I just want to look at programs. And it filters just on programs. I'm going to look at everything though. I'm going to take this back out. I'm going to hide and I can go ahead and let's see, we're looking here and we're looking at the actual versus budget and we're seeing some really what's going on with salaries because the budget's a lot higher. And if I drill into that, then I get to see a little more detail and maybe we didn't get salaries recorded for a certain period. And so that's why it's too low. So you get a good easy way to drill back. And then I can export it to Excel or I can just print it out and just print it out. Let me see on the print. Let me show more here. We got some date ranges. I'm going to do a little formatting. I'm going to show some alternate shading. It just looks prettier, and skip zero balance lines. Let's preview it. And there's just a nice little printout that you could send to Excel if you wanted to download to Excel or do what you want with that. So that's just a quick overview on those financial reports. The other piece about financial reporting and just reporting in general that I didn't point out and I want to make sure I was aware of is how Power BI is embedded in Business Central. So it used to be this last version, Microsoft released 75 out of the box Business Central Power BI reports. So Power BI is one of the report writing tools. Power BI can pull data from not just Business Central, but from other systems. So you can do reporting that's combined and then launch them. Like I have this launched right on my home screen. So this is the set of financial out of the box reports that they released in this last version. And I'm going to go ahead and expand that. So these are nonprofit specific, but I could see some of them being useful, even though they're not nonprofit specific. This one is basically going through and doing a report on budget versus actual. You've got your income accounts, you got your balance sheet accounts. Not maybe we don't budget on balance sheet, but we do on income accounts. So for those that have never used Power BI, you have this like drill through. So you still have drill back into it. So I could drill back into the income statement and see the transactions that make up that 29,000 that I was looking at. I've got filters over here on the right. I've got download capabilities to download this through Power BI. But you'll notice that this set of reports, I've got a whole set of reports, liquidity, profitability, liabilities. Now, and I will say, I wouldn't call them nonprofit related, but I like everybody could do a budget comparison. I mean, that's pretty important. They've got a nice financial overview. They said the next quarter, next version rollout, we should get these reports, the actual report files that you could tweak them. So you don't have to build your own from scratch, that you take the existing set that's been provided and then be able to tweak them. So that's exciting. These are some of just the newest things coming through. I do have, so I did get through most of what I wanted to cover, but I'm going to cover one more thing, just another example of Copilot and how Copilot's very helpful. So in the cash management area, of course, Business Central has the ability to do bank recs. And the first thing that pops up, I haven't done a bank rec, but this little button is I can use Copilot to help me reconcile. With banking, so Business Central does have the ability to link direct to bank accounts. Some bank accounts it will link directly to, and you can pull the data in, so I wouldn't have to import the transaction in. I don't have linking turned on, obviously, because I'm on a test environment. I don't even have a real bank account, but I'm going to import the transactions. And so what that is I'm importing the transactions from the bank statement. And then I'm using that and letting Copilot and Business Central try to match them to what's in BC. So we're going to go ahead and import. It browses, I could drag the file over, or I'm just going to go ahead and I don't have a huge file. I've just got a certain set of transactions just to show you an example. So I've imported the file. I'm going to use it. It finds the statement end date, and I'm going to generate to let Copilot try to match transactions and BC. So what it's telling me here is that I've got 3 of 7 lines matched from BC. So BC out of the box without Copilot would have matched 3. BC out of the box without Copilot, it does its matching. It's pretty strict. It matches based on dollar amount, and it matches based on date. And so there are transactions that may be in the bank recorded as a lump sum, but BC in detail, Copilot is smart enough to try to match those types of transactions. So I have one big deposit, but all the transactions in BC add up to that one big deposit. So it found for Booker Lopez from this 47, it matched it out to, it was one lump sum on the statement, but was multiple transactions in BC. And so it matched those. So matched an additional 3. And I'm going to say, yeah, that's great. Let's keep it. So of all the transactions, there was 7 transactions. It matched 6. And so down here, over here, it automatically updated. This is the bank statement lines, matched them against the bank ledger entries, which is the BC entries, and marks them in green that they're all matched. We do have one other transaction down here. I forgot to record bank service charges. And so I need to get that recorded. So Copilot also helps me post that difference. I know I could just post that difference and do a GL transaction. Copilot says, okay, that's negative $200. We think we should post it to 6020 bank service charge. And that's where I do want to post it. And so bear with me. Oh, sorry. I do need to provide it with what journal I want to go to. This is a one-time chart. One time I'm going to put it in the default journal. So now I can say keep it. And it'll go ahead, it'll record that. Oh, I guess I didn't have, there were errors. Okay, so I've got some problems with my journal. I didn't post this out there, but it would, oh, there's that journal entry. I probably set some rules that I don't have it posting automatically, but if I had it set up properly, it would post it, automatically match those, and it'd be all set to go. So nice way Copilot helps you become more efficient. Like I said, the investment is there and continues to be invested. So what we should see more and more places where Copilot's going to try to help you be more efficient with using the system. All right. I do have 3 minutes left. I think I'll take up just kind of an overview. I just want to kind of point out another thing that is new in Business Central, just so you point this out. So Business Central always had the ability to do 1099s. You would print them, you could submit the file electronically. So we have 1099s. The newest version just launched in December is your ability to submit the 1099s direct to the IRS. So you don't have to download a file. You can actually submit those 1099s direct to the IRS through the IRS website. So that's will probably coming up here. Clients, quite a few clients, even ourselves, Boyer uses Business Central. So we'll be using that new feature to automate, to further automate the 1099 process. All right. All right. We've got 2 minutes. I think we're probably, I probably could take up probably another hour if I wanted to, but I won't do that. That's your general overview of Business Central. I'm going to go ahead and we'll go ahead and open up so I'll go ahead and have Katie. I'll stop. Well, Katie can go ahead and let me share this. Thank you for joining us. We will be sending out the slides. We have contact information here. If you need more information, more questions, we can follow up and we'll be able to provide the link to the video.